Your ugliness suits you well, he shouted at me while pointing his finger. And then all of a sudden he splashed beer on me. My body was hardly moving from high fever, and I had only laid down on the sofa for a few minutes. What was that for? I was just lying on the sofa because I was feeling feverish and tired. As I was saying this, I forced myself up. I could feel the beer dripping from my bangs down to my face. The distinctive smell of beer and the unpleasant feeling of the liquid trickling down my scalp made me feel like throwing up.
I don't care. I have never seen a wife who is still asleep even when her husband is about to go on a trip.
Holding a suitcase in his hand, my husband said arrogantly,
You're a housewife. Stop being lazy and do your chores. The house is messy. It's terrible.
I'm not being lazy, but even if I want to clean, my knees hurt and I can't quite do as I wish.
Don't make excuses. You have a fever? Your knees hurt? I don't care.
My husband's eyes were bloodshot with anger as he glared at me.
Clean the house by the time I get back.
Understood. I will clean the house. My husband left for his trip without a word. He'll be back in 2 weeks. While in the shower, washing away the beer that had been poured over my head, tears of frustration and sadness overflowed uncontrollably. We had been a token couple for quite some time now, but that in itself may have been a mistake. Moreover, being treated this way when I was feeling ill with fever was just too much. Clean it up before I get back, huh? I was dazed with fever and muttering to myself, remembering what my husband had told me, when a great idea suddenly occurred to me. If I put this idea into action, I could really make him suffer. And he might regret and lament the horrible way he treated me. All right, I'll show him. I'll take down my husband, who has been mean and ruthless. I'll clear all the feelings I've been holding back. My name is Emily, and I'm 75 this year. Although I'm a stay-at-home housewife now, I used to work at City Hall until I was 60. I have a son, but he and his family are working overseas, so now I live with Tom, my husband, who is 5 years younger. After reaching retirement age, my husband continued to work until 70 and retired 3 months ago. I thought he might feel down after retiring, as he had been so devoted to his work. But contrary to expectations, he is living every day full of energy.
You're living a carefree life every day, so you probably can't keep up with the information society. That's why you can't even use a computer, right? It's pathetic.
Saying so, my husband thought he was keeping up with the trends of the times. He mocked me and made fun of me. What the heck? He doesn't know anything about me. Don't make fun of me. I can use a computer just fine.
Well, what you can do with a computer is probably just browsing websites, right? That doesn't count as being able to use it.
My relationship with my husband, who is always condescending and negative towards me in this way, has long since cooled off. Just the thought of this life continuing forever was depressing to me. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with a stomach cancer and underwent treatment. Fortunately, it was discovered early and surgery prevented it from being serious. But even then, my husband was constantly grumpy and mean. Even for the hospital admission for surgery tests, he complained and grumbled.
Hey, you'll have to be hospitalized for surgery, right? Then why can't the examination be done on an outpatient basis?
Even if you say that, this is what the doctor told me, so there's nothing I can do about it.
It'll be troublesome if a housewife leaves the house that much. What about my meals? Laundry, too. Isn't it obvious that you should prioritize your husband over yourself?
I still vividly remember his cold eyes and the awful words he said to me so nonchalantly. I was facing anxiety and fear, thinking that I might lose my life to cancer. It was a hospital stay for testing, so it would have been nice if he could have supported me. Even while working, no matter how tired I was, I never failed to cook meals for my husband. Have you ever thought about what would happen if I died from the stomach cancer?
Yeah, well, I suppose it would be troublesome if the woman who cooks my meals were gone.
Hearing my husband say such a thing so casually, I felt indescribably sad. And during the long period that followed from the examination to the hospital stay for surgery, my husband only visited me once. And that one time was only because a family member had to be there on the day of the surgery, and the hospital told him to come.
Why do I have to take time off work to come here?
As soon as he entered the hospital room, my husband said this with a blatantly grumpy attitude.
I want to accomplish my work as a salaried worker until retirement. Don't you know that there is not much time left?
I'm sorry for making you take time off from work to come here. Despite feeling as though my heart was being crushed by the fear and anxiety of the upcoming surgery, my husband's heartless words ruthlessly pierced my chest. Talking to such a ruthless husband became so painful, I apologized anyway. Since he was like that, even after I was dismissed, there was absolutely no consideration for my body, and he just wanted to continue our previous lifestyle. First, what I saw after coming back from the hospital was the kitchen and dining table littered with takeout boxes and empty beer cans. I silently and diligently cleaned up the garbage, which had begun to stink from being left unwashed. The house we lived in was inherited from my parents. Being an only daughter, I took over the house and land. Although we both decided to renovate and live in this old house, my husband didn't want to pay a single cent for the renovation.
It's not like I wanted to live in this house in the first place, so isn't it strange for me to pay for it?
Then should we sell this house and buy one for ourselves?
It's ridiculous to buy a new house when we already have one. Your parents left you an inheritance, right? Use that to fix the house.
Looking back, the idea was terrible, but I renovated the house with my savings and the inheritance my parents left me. Therefore, the house and land are in my name. However, despite not having paid a penny for the renovation, my husband occasionally tells me to change the house and land into his name.
It's strange for the house to be in the wife's name when we're living together as a couple. Wouldn't it be better if the house and land were in my name as the head of the household?
Even as a couple, property is individual, so I can't do that. After all, I also worked at the city hall until retirement. I have the same desire to protect my property and live my life as anyone else.
What property? You're just doing housework without trying to find a new job after retiring at 60. You can live this carefree life because I'm still working, right?
Regardless of what you say, the house and land were inherited from my parents, and I will never transfer them to you.
You ungrateful wretch. Just do as you please.
Every time he brings up changing the ownership, I refuse, and he reacts by angrily knocking things over, stomping loudly, and retreating to his study. He even lashes out at objects around him. I have lost my precious collection of glasses and vases because of this. My husband, who arrogantly scolded me for being unemployed after retirement, is now facing the end of his extended employment in 3 months. However, even as his retirement approached, his contemptuous attitude toward me did not change one bit.
You worked until 60 and then became unemployed. I worked until 70. I'm 5 years younger than you, so I worked for 15 years longer. Keep that in mind.
His logic is hard to understand, but he seems to think he made a clever point. He complains to me even more now than when he was working.
I told you I was going out today, so why didn't you clean my shoes? The bristles on this toothbrush are frayed. You should have replaced it before I had to tell you. Yuck! This soup is way too salty. Are you trying to raise my blood pressure?
Could it be that my husband's unchanging energy after retirement comes from constantly picking on me and taking out his frustrations? He might be okay with that, but being on the receiving end of these constant complaints is unbearable for me. His words cut deep, and each time I feel a tightening sensation inside my body. It's particularly disheartening to hear such thoughtless comments when I'm struggling with stomach cancer. To make matters worse, my knees have recently started hurting as well. At 75, it's not surprising that various parts of my body are starting to rattle, but even this seems to be disappointing to my husband.
Hey, are you cleaning properly? This hallway seems dusty.
My knee is hurting right now, so I couldn't mop the floor.
Everyone your age has knee pain. If you don't clean, who will? Are you planning to make me live in a house full of dust and trash?
Though I really don't want to live with my husband anymore, it would be difficult to bring up divorce or separation without a clear reason. Without a decisive factor, I wonder if divorce is possible just being on the receiving end of malicious words. Perhaps decisive factor must be something like debt or infidelity. If a divorce discussion were to begin and he denied his actions, would the discussion end without progress? I found myself thinking only about how I could get away from my husband. Amidst this, my husband planned a 2-month trip abroad. I could not be more happier. Once he leaves, I would be free from his verbal abuse for 2 whole months. I wouldn't have to experience the indescribable feeling of being grasped from the inside, living in fear. Maybe the feeling of relief led me to get my guard down. I somehow got a fever. The morning my husband was to leave for his trip, I woke up coughing. When I tried to sit up, I felt dizzy. Despite the room not being particularly cold, chills ran down my back. Even though I wanted to move, my entire body felt as heavy and sluggish as lead. I knew I had a fever without taking my temperature. Of all the days, I feel feverish. I muttered to myself and took out a thermometer to check my temperature. Despite how I was feeling, the thermometer beeped a cheerful electronic sound, and the display read 101.3 degrees Fahrenheit. It made sense, feeling dizzy with such a high fever. But if I didn't prepare breakfast for my husband before he leaves for his trip, I didn't know what kind of nasty comment he might make. I managed to crawl out of bed, not being able to move as I would hope, and headed to the kitchen. Once my husband leaves for his trip, I could spend some time alone at ease, so I decided to push myself just for now. I wanted to start my precious alone time not being interrupted by my husband's snide remarks and verbal abuse.
You're taking too long. I have a flight to catch. Hurry up and make me breakfast.
My husband carelessly threw these words at me as I somehow managed to prepare breakfast. He seemed completely unaware that I had a high fever. I'm sorry. It'll be ready soon.
I always tell you to have the meal ready so I can eat as soon as I wake up, didn't I?
With my mind foggy from fever, I prepared toast and eggs, bacon and steamed vegetables and delivered it to the table.
Hey, where's the coffee?
I'm preparing it now. I'll bring it out.
Damn it. You should have brought it out in the first place. You're so inconsiderate.
As I took the coffee to my husband, who kept complaining, I suddenly felt very dizzy. I stumbled over to the entrance and opened the shoe closet to choose the shoes my husband would wear. Given what he had chosen to wear today, I picked his black leather shoes. As I polished them, I began to feel terribly sick. It must have been because of the high fever that my body felt so heavy I couldn't stand up straight. Despite feeling awful, I somehow managed to finish polishing the shoes, and then collapsed onto the sofa in the living room. I wanted to rest my aching body just a little bit until my husband left. Thinking I had just a little time before seeing him off, I gently closed my eyes and rested. But I was only able to lie down and rest for a short time.
You scumbag. What are you doing?
Suddenly, my husband's loud voice rang above me, and something splashed down on my head. "What?" I screamed in response to the unexpected situation, and at the same time I noticed a foul smell. It was the beer that I hated. I looked up and there was my husband holding a can of beer.
You look fitting, all covered in beer.
My husband yelled and threw the can that still had beer in it at me. "What are you doing all of a sudden?" "I was just lying down on the sofa because I have a fever and my body feels heavy." As I said this and got up, beer dripped down my face from my head. Oh, what an awful feeling. The smell of beer, the sensation of it flowing down my face, and the sight of my cruel husband.
I don't give a damn about that. Where in the world would one find a wife who is still sleeping in the morning when her husband is leaving for a trip?
No matter how much I complained about my condition, my husband's expression didn't change at all, showing no concern.
Don't be lazy and do housework like a proper housewife. The house is dirty, it's in a terrible state.
His face twisted with disappointment and anger as he started to complain about the way I cleaned. "I'm not being lazy. My knees hurt so I can't clean as I would like to."
Don't make excuses. Fever? Knee pain? I don't care.
He spat those words at me, glaring.
Make sure you clean up nicely by the time I get back.
Understood. I will clean properly, I answered, holding back my tears of frustration and sadness, and my husband seemed satisfied. Being in a better mood, he grabbed his suitcase and left for his trip. I took a shower to wash away the beer and then went to bed. When I woke up, it was already evening. It seems I had been asleep since my husband left for his trip. When I got up, the dizziness and headache that had been so painful were completely gone. Sleep must be the best medicine for illness. However, the unresolved feelings was still inside me. When I went to the living room, I saw the sofa and the memories of the morning came flooding back. I even remembered the nasty smell of the beer that had been poured over my head. Even though I cleaned the sofa after my husband left it, still felt like I smelled like beer. As I sat blankly in the living room feeling the sun setting, I started to feel anger towards my husband. After all, I was the one who inherited this house, not him. I was just resting because of the fever. Why did I have to have beer poured on me? What's more, the constant harsh words from my husband doesn't help at all.
Your ugliness suits you well.
A husband who says hurtful words as if it's normal, even to family members. He shows no concern or care for me when I'm sick and in pain, pushing through his demands regardless. He tells me to change the house and land into his name as though it's only natural. At what seems to be the final stage of my life where I'm trying to reach my goal, why am I still living with a husband like him? As I was reflecting on everything that had happened, I suddenly remembered something. There was something that had popped onto my head while I was taking a shower earlier.
Make sure to clean up nicely before I get back.
Those were the words he had said to me, being sarcastic about how messy the house was. Fine, if he says the house is dirty, I'll clean it spotless. I immediately turned on my laptop. My husband seems to think that I'm not good with computers, but that's not true. After retiring from the city office where I worked for many years, I used my retirement money to study web design. Since then, I've been working as a freelancer, using my status as a 70-year-old active web designer as a unique selling point. My husband mocks me, not knowing this, but now I have work and have earned more money. I'm in a position where I could separate from my husband this instant without any trouble. I can live on my earnings alone without depending on my husband. While my husband is on his overseas trip, I will clean this house as he wishes and get back at him. Once I made up my mind, I went to a local real estate agency the next day. Perhaps because of the plan to get back at my husband, my usually painful knee felt a little less sore.
Oh my, Emily, long time no see.
President Johnson of the real estate agency greeted me with a smile. I had previously worked with President Johnson on designing a homepage, and although he's more than 20 years younger, we hit it off and we are good friends. Hello, I'm sorry to impose on you like this, asking you to make time for me.
Oh, don't worry about it. I was actually thinking that I'd like to have lunch with you. Come, please have a seat here.
He showed me to his office, and as we had coffee, I explained the reason for my visit to President Johnson. It's time to execute the idea I had recently come up with to get back at my husband. Actually, I've been thinking about selling my house.
What? Your own house?
The sudden decision of me selling the house seemed to surprise the president. I'm getting older, and I've started to feel that managing the house is becoming a burden. My knee has been hurting lately, so I feel it even more so.
That makes sense. Your house is quite spacious.
Yes, this is my plan to punish my husband and get revenge. The idea I've come up with is to sell the property I own while my husband is on his trip. I'll clean the place as he wishes, so when he returns, there will be nothing. I was thinking of using the money from selling the property to move and live alone. My house is in a rather crowded area near the station, right? I wonder if it might sell for a higher price if I demolish the old house and sell it as a vacant lot, rather than leaving it as it is. By deliberately turning it into a vacant lot, I'll throw away all of my husband's belongings. I have no emotional attachment or hesitation to that house.
That's very you. There have been inquiries about that area, looking for a good piece of land, not only for building a house, but quite a few people want to turn it into a parking lot.
Thanks to what President Johnson said, my decision became solid. All right, I'll definitely do it. Before my husband returns, I'll demolish that house, turn it into a vacant lot, and suddenly make my husband's belongings, his home, and even myself disappear. To my husband, I'm not so much a wife, but more like a housekeeper. Before I knew it, the real estate sale was rapidly progressing, and thanks to President Johnson's referral, I was able to rushingly move into a rental apartment. I decided to use a moving company's package service to handle the heavy packing and moving. This way, the move shouldn't be too much of a physical burden. The house itself is scheduled to be demolished just in time, a day before my husband returns. The scenario is that when my husband returns, everything, the house, his belongings, even his wife, will be gone. I wonder how he'll feel when he sees the land cleaned, as he wished. Finally, the day before the move, I wandered into the study and bedroom my husband used. Everything in the study was to be disposed of during the demolition, but I suddenly wanted to see what was there. I casually opened a drawer of the computer desk. Looking inside, I thought I was seeing an optical illusion. What? What is this? What does this mean? Inside the drawer were a large number of DVDs. I looked closely and saw that each DVD case was numbered. Wondering what these DVDs were, I started my husband's computer, picked one at random, and hit play. My heart almost stopped by the unexpected content I saw. The footage on the DVD was clearly what seemed to be illegally recorded. I hurriedly checked several other DVDs, and each one contained footage taken in public restrooms, dressing rooms, so on, and the number represented the locations. Moreover, there was even footage of my daughter-in-law and granddaughter undressing in our bathroom when my eldest son's family stayed at our house during a temporary return to the country. The truth was so disgusting that it made me feel sick to my stomach. When I opened the other drawers, I found a large number of envelopes stored inside. Who on earth was he planning to send these to? What on earth was he doing with all of this stuff? I decided to dig through further into Tom's computer. When I opened a folder labeled Documents, I found a suspicious-looking directory. It contained a list of names, addresses, dates, transfer amounts, and DVD numbers. Upon closer inspection, all the names were male, and the addresses were from all over the US. Considering all of this suspicious data, Tom must have been secretly recording footage in changing rooms and women's restrooms, copying it onto DVD-Rs. He was probably selling these DVDs all over the country. It was very likely of my 7-year-old husband to sell voyeuristic footage via mail instead of online downloads. Furthermore, since there was footage of our home's dressing room, there was no doubt that the perpetrator was Tom. The next day after I had successfully moved out, I took all the evidence, including Tom's computer and the DVD-Rs, to the police station and explained everything. Then, the day Tom was due to return home arrived. I got a lift from President Johnson to the empty lot where our house once stood. To avoid being seen by Tom, we parked a little away from the site, but still within clear view of it.
Wow, Emily, I had no idea you were enduring all this. I couldn't have imagined.
From the driver's seat, President Johnson, his voice filled with anger, uttered, I had confided everything to him about the horrible way Tom treated me.
After all, to me, Emily, you are my goal. You've aged gracefully, and you're someone I admire.
Oh, that's nice of you to say. Oh, it looks like Tom's back. We could see Tom walking from the station, pulling his suitcase behind him. President Johnson and I ducked low to avoid being noticed and watched Tom. Seeing his home changed to an empty lot, Tom stood frozen, with a shocked expression on his face. He looked around frantically and immediately began searching his pockets. Almost instantly, my phone started ringing. Of course, the caller was none other than Tom, standing right in front of us.
Hey, what the hell is going on?
I deliberately set the phone to speaker mode so that President Johnson could hear. Tom's intimidating voice echoed loudly. Oh, what do you mean?
Don't play dumb. Our house is gone.
Well, you said to clean it up thoroughly before you came back, right? So I cleaned it up so thoroughly that it couldn't get any cleaner than that.
What are you talking about? What happened to my stuff? Where's my computer?
It seems he realized that along with the disappearance of the house, his personal belongings were also gone. I could imagine him being upset by the tone of his voice from the other side of the phone. Perhaps he was worried about those DVDs. Don't worry, I've cleaned everything up nicely.
Cleaned up? You didn't throw everything away, did you?
Of course. When I was cleaning the house, I cleaned those up as well.
You! What the hell? Don't think you're getting away with this.
Just as Tom was raising his voice and lashing out, a police car pulled up in front of the empty lot. Seeing the police car, Tom immediately started to run away. It seemed he was indeed aware he had done something illegal. However, 2 officers stepped out of the police car and effortlessly captured Tom.
Excuse me, but you're Mr. Tom Meade, correct?
I could hear the voice of the police officer from the other side of the phone.
We'd like you to come down to the station with us to discuss charges related to the distribution of obscene materials and voyeurism. What? You know what this is about, don't you? Let's go.
The officer's tone left no room for argument, and my husband finally gave in and got into the car.
That scumbag Emily! She did this to me!
Tom seemed frustrated as he uttered his last resentful words, but I couldn't see him. After being taken to the police station, Tom was, as expected, arrested. Just as I had thought, he had placed hidden cameras in various places such as the toilet and changing rooms and was secretly filming. What's more, he was selling the copied footage on DVDs for profit. It was indeed a pitiful ending, although it was a consequence of his own actions. Fortunately, I was able to divorce Tom smoothly, using his disgrace as the reason. From now on, I won't have to experience things like having beer poured over my head, or being treated and spoken to as if I was a servant. I still work as a web designer. Many of my clients are relatively older. At the regular medical checkups at the hospital, no abnormalities have been found so far, although my knee continues to hurt. Other than that, I am living comfortably.
Mom, come and visit while you're still well. I'll show you around.
The other day, I received a call from my eldest son, who is currently on an assignment overseas. He was worried about how I was after Tom's arrest and our divorce. I have decided to accept his kind invitation and will be visiting my eldest son and his family next month. My name is Emily, and I am 75 years old. I am currently working as a web designer. I intend to live the final chapter of my life calmly and true to myself.